treatment is different from healing. Healing is an internal process of becoming whole, while treatment is an outside-in approach, a physical manipulation of your physical form. Treatment can do nothing but try to break you into parts, try to cut away your illness. But if you believe in your treatment enough, it can lead to healing, because your belief forces you to confront the core of the stress reaction, which is the real source of your symptom. Nature makes no mistakes. God does not play dice. Instead, all of creation springs forth according to a few simple, elegant rules. All of creation, including your body. Know these rules and your body comes under your control. Welcome to Mind Over Symptom, where the pattern is revealed. Organically generated illness, that is, illness that comes from the inside, that's not a direct result of injury, poisoning, or malnutrition, is incurable. We try to cure organically generated illnesses from the outside, and it doesn't work. Instead of recognizing that these treatments don't work, we double our efforts. Not at all scientific. In fact, just the result of a cultural belief system, an ancient dogma, and one that you're supposed to grow out of in early childhood. The truth is that organically generated symptoms that spontaneously arise in our bodies, where our bodies or brains just start growing lumps or getting our hormones out of whack, or where we start having irrational desires like a desire to kill ourselves, these symptoms arise because our bodies are attempting to respond to some type of traumatic stress. When your body produces a symptom, it's because you've had a traumatic shock experience. This is easy to understand. We can even figure out what your traumatic stress situation is by the type of symptom you've got. The word heal means to make whole, to put yourself back together, to feel that the universe has a meaningful pattern to it. To resolve your symptom, whatever that symptom is, you must regain your sense of well-being. That's what healing is. It's a mental game. Your body just reacts to that event in your psyche. We're familiar with this when it happens in the emotions. I can make myself cry just by thinking up a sad story about a poor starving puppy. Crying is a physical biochemical process, and I can make it happen just with my thoughts. All biochemical processes, even tumors or changes in brain chemistry, they're all the same. They're the body component of whatever happens in your psyche. See, your body does not react to the world around you. Carcinogens, angry words, germs, toxins, bad fats, negative demonic energy, your body doesn't react to any of them. If it did, then we could reanimate corpses just by creating the perfect environment, right? No. Your body is an isolated, lonely thing. Your physical form is a collection of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and a few other elements lumped together. Your brain is a central server that controls this whole blob of chemical compounds. But your brain itself is a wet blob of a few billion neurons sealed within a solid encasement of your skull. When you're born, you're not much more than that, just this wet blob of biochemicals that feels hungry for something and it doesn't even know what. That little baby that was born virtually blind, deaf, and insensate, unable to control its bladder, unable to articulate its thoughts, unaware of anything other than its own sense of separation. That tiny being spent the first couple years of its life both inside and out of the womb, absorbing massive amounts of data, and forming mental patterns and giving meaning to the data. First, you absorbed variations in light and dark, variations in high-pitched sounds versus low-pitched sounds, variations in temperature and pressure on your skin, variations in bitterness, sweetness, saltiness on your tongue. These data came into your brain from your sense organs. They did not get into your brain from your genes, from microbes, or from carcinogens. These data did not make you see, hear, feel, taste, or smell the physical world by inserting toxins or trauma or emotion into you. You did the seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, and smelling. You absorbed the meaningless data through your senses into your brain. You found the meaning in those meaningless data. And this has never changed. To this day, your brain is still sealed up in a tight casing. What you imagine to be the world out there is just the meaning that you're making about otherwise meaningless sensory data. It's a program in your own brain that you wrote. Imagine that you're walking down a set of stairs, but the third step from the bottom is missing. You're walking unconsciously, thinking about something unrelated, maybe chatting with a friend. When you get to that missing step, you have an instant reaction. You flinch, you gasp, your arms fly up and out, your back arches backward, your adrenals shoot out a shot of adrenaline, your blood sugar spikes up, all your muscles go tense, every muscle in your body. And your attention snaps out of whatever you're thinking or talking about. You become 100% present to the current moment. All your senses go on full alert. Time stops. Your brain and body and your psyche have one goal only, and that is to get you through the next 1/10 of a second. The future and the past vanish. There's only this one moment, and it's about survival. This is what I mean by a biological conflict. What I've just described is the standard brain, body, and psyche response to a traumatic stress event. Now, here's the question. Did the staircase make your body, brain, and psyche do all those things? Did the missing third step from the bottom threaten your survival so much that you really had to do all that adrenaline and flailing arms and gasping and everything? Of course not. It was just a few inches. You could easily handle that little difference. Worst case scenario, you would have lost your balance and fallen on your butt down the last couple steps, maybe a bruise, but not the end of your life. But your brain had no idea. All your brain ever knows is what's going on in this exact moment, and only if your senses are bringing in accurate data about this exact moment. And your brain expected the step to be there. That was the pattern. Your brain had just experienced the top 10 steps all being right where they were supposed to be in a predictable pattern, but then the 11th step wasn't there, and as far as your brain knew, you just stepped off a cliff. As far as your brain knew, 1/10 of a second before the incident, steps occur every 7 inches. And your brain was cool with this. You could relax and chat with your friend and think about other things. But because of this expectation, when the step was not there, then all bets are off. The entire cosmos went out of order. You had to turn on every survival mechanism you have. That's how every organic illness comes about. Cancer, heart disease, childhood illnesses, even the common cold, they all begin with this type of emergency biological response to a traumatic stress. Every symptom starts in your brain with a sudden, intense, isolating break from the expected order. If we want to solve those symptoms, we need to give the brain an explanation. We need to let the brain know that everything's okay. Look, there's the next step. I'm okay. I've survived. Thank you very much, brain. It's all fine. Then you stand up, you pull your skirt back down, you smooth your hair, you sigh, you shake it off. Your heart rate and breathing slow down to normal. You gather up your papers, you get back on your way. After a minute or two, you even return to the conversation you were having before the incident. I'm not saying you can just shake off cancer or meningitis like this, but the process is the same. You resolve the original trauma, you let your brain know that things are okay, and then you help put yourself back together. After healing, you get on with your life. And we have the tools to do this. I use these tools all day, every day. I help people figure out the trauma that their brain, psyche, and body are reacting to. I help them to show their brain that it's okay, that the universe is still orderly, they're still safe. I have a set of tools and communication techniques which make this process fast and effective. In fact, I will give you a sample of it in just a few minutes. We identify the biological conflict that's the real reason for someone's arthritis or their suicidal thoughts or the blockage of their fallopian tubes. Then we resolve that biological conflict. Then we support the body's healing while it puts everything back to normal again. But this, unfortunately, isn't what happens with normal medical treatment or even most alternative health approaches. Instead of resolving the trauma, we tend to add to it. Oh my God, says the conventional treatment approach, not only was the mean, nasty staircase victimizing you and traumatizing you, but now your body is betraying you with adrenaline and tight muscles, and your arms flying around outside of your control, and that's not normal, and your hair is standing on end, and your heart is beating too fast, and your blood sugar is too high, and all these things are wrong with you. It must be genetic. We'll have to give you medication and a wheelchair, maybe some surgery to take that shocked look off your face. You look really weird. Then after you stay in that suspended stress state for a few months, plus you experience a whole lot more trauma because of your diagnosis and all these bizarre treatments, then what's written on your obituary at that point is that you lost your battle with flailing arms, skirt over your head disease. Rest in peace, you brave soldier, you. Flashback to being born. That newborn baby experiencing coldness and the shock of separation from her mother. She doesn't have the faintest idea that these feelings are because of her own internal reactions to the environment. To the baby, these feelings are because of the environment. A subtle distinction at first, but over time a distinction that decides whether that child can soothe itself or whether the child will fail to survive at all. That newborn child has a perfect body, perfect fat and muscle balance, perfect clear skin, perfect little fingers and toes, a perfect clean intestinal tract, perfect eyes, perfectly shaped ears, perfect little rosebud lips, and it has a brain that's a third the size of its body. The child has perfect physical equipment. Yet it is totally helpless and will die within days if its every need is not looked after by someone whose body is far less perfect. The child must learn to soothe its own needs. The child must learn to make sense of sensory data, form patterns in its brain, then use those brain patterns to initiate actions like moving its legs or controlling its vocal cords. Eventually, a baby will learn to walk and talk, and then learn to make her own sandwiches, and then learn to make up stories to get herself out of unpleasant situations. This baby will eventually become an autonomous adult who takes responsibility for her own needs, moves forward to solve them, and gets resolution. Until then, however, the child will experience all pain, suffering, hunger, upset, and so on as a problem of the environment that is happening to her. She will not recognize that hunger, pain, sadness, and so on are her own biological response to her own interpretation of data in her own brain. Until she gets this principle, she'll blame her symptoms on the world outside herself, and she will expect that solutions come from the world outside herself. So her focus will be on fixing the world outside of herself instead of on correcting the real source of the problem. Now, we live in a culture that's developmentally arrested. For thousands of years, we've taught our children the story of our cultural ancestors, that both our survival and our failure to survive are a result of the world around us. We're helpless pawns in a battle between the forces of good and evil, between God and the devil. If we get to eat for a day, that means we're in with the good guys. But if something bad happens, that means we've fallen in with the devil. This is our ancestral story. It's been handed down from the earliest days of Western civilization, and has now become global culture. A story taught by our grandparents back hundreds of generations that life is a battle between the forces of good and evil. When you're on the side of goodness, you're rewarded with survival. The punishment for being on the side of evil is suffering. After death, the soul continues to reap either the reward of eternal survival or the punishment of eternal suffering. The forces of goodness and evil have changed faces over the centuries. God is now technological prowess, and being on the side of goodness will reward you with survival in the form of money, fame, a sexy body. We talk about deserving to be loved. We talk about earning our success, as though these things didn't belong to us, but were gifted from the outside. And the devil is now disease, in the guise of genes, germs, toxins, carcinogens, still invisible for the most part. But the forces of evil still punish us with suffering of all kinds. The names have changed, but the story's the same. It's a war. It's a battle for survival. We fight cancer. We live with genetic syndromes, the enemy within. We battle against depression or multiple sclerosis. Most of us join the war, and we're doing so sooner and sooner. But the war is totally made up. It's a story, a fairy tale in the brain, a meaning given to otherwise meaningless sensory information. Sure, it's been handed down to us. Sure, the story comes to us from our mothers and fathers, our churches, our schools, our courts, our public servants, our internet memes, from most everyone we know and love. But it's a story nonetheless. And this story is completely entrenched in modern medicine, including most alternative medicine. The story is that illness happens to you, an evil force from the outside. To be good, To be rewarded with survival, you must battle this force in mind, in spirit, and of course in cash check or credit card. So that's why we go for treatment from the outside instead of going for real healing. To accept that you're producing your symptom for a reason, that means the blame game is done. It would turn the whole story of God and the devil and the battle between good and evil into nothing but a silly children's story. The truth is, if you want to heal, first you must accept that neither the dark side nor the Jedi Knights are relevant. And that's hard. That's very hard. But if you do let go of the story, you'll see that by comparison, healing is not so hard. Every single symptom begins with the traumatic stress experience. It's your brain and body's emergency response to what your brain believes is a threat to your survival. And when that trauma situation is resolved, your body, brain, and psyche will put themselves back to normal, pull your skirt back down, smooth your hair, and get on with your day. Symptoms that arise as a direct reaction to the biological conflict situation are felt more as psychological symptoms. A sense of lack of well-being, anxiety, poor appetite, weight loss, sensory overload, terrible mood problems. Physical responses like cancer tumors or blood sugar or adrenal changes, these also occur in the conflict active phase, but we tend not to notice these so much because we're caught up in the moment, in the emergency feeling of the situation. It's in the healing phase that we experience most of the uncomfortable body symptoms, the pain, the swelling, the fevers, aggressive cancer growths, intense healing crises like seizures, heart attacks, and so on. Ironically, these healing phase symptoms, which occur as the body puts itself back together after successfully surviving an emergency stress situation, these healing phase symptoms are a lot more likely to kill you than the actual active conflict symptoms. This is where medical technology is excellent. It's in interrupting these healing phase symptoms that modern medicine saves lives. Modern medical treatment is a big part of why the population has doubled several times since the 17th century, back when people still thought that evil spirits give you diarrhea. Now, we understand that the sun does not go around the earth. We now know that even our sun itself isn't the center of the universe. Now we know that a god doesn't drag the sun across the sky each day. Now we are aware that angels don't have to interfere in our daily activities to make the wind blow or make objects fall toward the center of the planet. Now we know that illness doesn't come flying toward us on invisible waves of evil called humor or ether. The skills and techniques now available from a cool-headed understanding of anatomy and biochemistry, they're very impressive. But for symptoms that do not have an obvious source in injury, poisoning, or malnutrition, that is, organically generated symptoms that arise spontaneously in your body, this is where modern medicine sometimes falls flat on its face. Many medical treatments, life-saving for acute anatomical distress, are unhelpful for reducing organically generating symptoms. In fact, for symptoms that arise spontaneously in our body, many conventional treatments are quite detrimental. So why do we persist with these approaches? Why do we seek to diagnose illness sooner and sooner, try to catch it earlier and earlier, get those treatments started before we even feel discomfort? Because modern medicine, like the rest of our culture, still firmly believes that life is a battle between good and evil. Any form of treatment, which is based in the idea that your symptoms are a result of invisible evil forces which attack your body from the inside or outside, any treatment based in the philosophy that symptoms are bad things that happen to you, and that you must engage in battle against those symptoms. Well, these treatments are not founded in sound logic, and as a result, they can do more harm than good, depending on the situation. Medical and alternative treatments are absolutely great for helping you to recover from injury, poisoning, and malnutrition, for helping your body when you have an acute anatomical crisis. And this can be a lifesaver not only when you get run over by a herd of buffalo, but also during a healing crisis, when you're putting your body back together after resolving a traumatic stress situation, which, to your brain, is the same as getting run over by a herd of buffalo. But treatment is way less effective for any disease that isn't obviously caused by injury, poisoning, and malnutrition, because these symptoms are being caused by stress. The real solution to that symptom is to resolve the stress, not add to it. If instead of helping you to address your fear and resolve your symptom, your treatment increases your fear, creates new symptoms through diagnosis shock, or even tries to chase your disease out of you by physically harming your body with injury, poisoning, or malnutrition, then you're not healing. You're going to war. a fictitious war. This is the real reason why so many diseases are incurable. It's because our fear-based response makes us react with more stress, both psychological and physical, and this compounds the original stress response. This is also the real reason why average people are still so very unhealthy. Despite incredible advances in medical technology, despite all the ways that we have learned to make survival easy, seriously, there are hundreds of ways to grow food, to house ourselves, to keep ourselves warm, to get from A to B without being eaten by a tiger. Our lack of health is because we cling to this ancient story about life being a battle between the forces of good and evil. Atheists believe the story just as much as religious people do. The name for evil is now germs, genes, toxins, or carcinogens. Gluten made me do it. Heck, for anti-theists, God is evil. After all, God created a world in which children get cancer or insects bore into your eyeballs and make you blind. It's an ancient story with modern players. The devil is disease. Who fights on the side of goodness? Medical practitioners. Fair enough. Today I want to offer you an extra option, a powerful new weapon to help you in your battle against illness and suffering. This option is just to take a moment to give your brain what it needs to be able to end the emergency stress response. Take a moment to focus on your health problem. When did this problem start? What was going on in your life just before this problem started? What major incident occurred in your life, something that caught you off guard? What trauma did you experience? I want to leave you today with the seed of your healing, and that is that you must return to that traumatic moment and make peace with it. You must find the stair step. You must find the pattern that your brain needs to make sense of the universe once again. Healing means to make whole. No treatment can make you whole because treatments are physical. The source of your symptom is that your brain is missing something psychologically. It's missing the answer to why your pattern was interrupted, why this bad thing happened, why you got separated from your well-being. Your brain is missing your version of God. And your symptom, whether it's a runny nose or paraplegia, it'll continue until you go back to that original fall from grace and make peace and put the world back to rights. Remember, your life is not about being a mere physical cog in a great mechanical wheel. If that's all you were, then there are billions of other people who could be doing your life for you. No, you are a consciousness. You're having experiences, moving from one physical state to another in a process of evolution. This is the force on this planet which brought you to this point. You're alive today because hundreds of generations survived long enough to create children, who survived long enough to create more children, who survived long enough to create you. You are more powerful than all the gods and devils of your ancestors. This has been episode 10 of the Mind Over Symptom podcast. I'm Liz Springford, a scientist and your guide for radical self-healing. I help people to identify the real source of their symptoms and to then overcome their symptoms by resolving the stress that underlies the symptoms. You can get free support by picking up my 6-lesson Mind Over Symptom training and other free materials, and you can also get one-on-one support to identify the specific cause of your symptom in order to resolve it at its source. Please provide feedback about this podcast via a review or by connecting with me through my various channels. The Mind Over Symptom blog lives at mindtreehealth.net. Links to these and other info from the episode are in the show notes. I look forward to being with you again soon. Until then, be well and have a great day. I hope you enjoyed Mind Over Symptom. To make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe now and please share with a loved one. The Mind Over Symptom blog lives at mindtreehealth.net, where you can get your free training about the natural laws of healing, and you can also get support. I'm Liz Springford, your guide for radical self-healing.